So as I covered before, we're going to have some sort of main lift. So we have back squat today, partnered up with some sort of low level exercise. So we have planks here. And again, if plank is a little too intense for the client, you can always do a hands elevated plank, or look at some way to reduce the intensity, so it's something relatively easy that they can do in between their sets. And again, this could be a hip mobility kind of exercise, like 90-90 rotations or hip cars, anything like that. Just something to slow people down, force them to take some rest, and also just get some extra work in that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. After that, we've got the supporting exercise for the back squat, again, because we're doing a lower body day. We're not doing two supporting, we're just doing the one. So we've got Romanian deadlifts. And when it comes to supporting exercises for lower body, I'll typically pair it up with something of an opposing muscle group. So a back squat is a knee dominant, primarily quad dominant exercise. So Romanian deadlifts, primarily hamstrings and glutes, lower back. So posterior chain versus anterior chain. You can also use, I really like to use heavy barbell lunges here too, because even though technically lunges are a knee dominant exercise, you put a heavy barbell and you do reverse lunges, it's going to be a mostly glute kind of posterior chain exercise as well, since you're stepping back and you have to really use your posterior chain to decelerate and then pull it back forward when you stand back up. Also, you see I paired that up with another core exercise. And again, you could pair this up with a hip mobility exercise if you prefer, if the client needs that type of thing. Or, I mean, potentially what you could do is some sort of lower level quad dominant exercise, like maybe a one leg squat to a box where it's kind of elevated. It's not super intense. They're not using a lot of weight. Obviously, it's going to be typically a body weight exercise. So that is potential. Personally, I just like a relatively heavier core exercise because it's not quite as intense. They're giving their legs a complete break, and it's really not going to be as taxing as another leg exercise. And then from there, we finish with a circuit of lunge, side planks, and one leg hip thrust. You can see that this is very similar to the previous workout sheet that I covered, where I didn't really change much. Like side planks stay the same, plank was the same. So we're just changing a few things here, and we have a completely different workout compared to what we had before. Now, if we're doing an upper body day, again, it's going to typically be bench press, overhead press. And overhead press, since overhead press is a relatively lighter exercise, it's still heavy. Obviously, it's a big barbell movement, but it is relatively lighter. You think about, like, if people can bench 225, they're not overhead pressing anywhere near 200 pounds. Usually it's like, 150 to 100, maybe 185 if they're really strong. So it's not quite as taxing. So what I will do a lot of times when it comes to the overhead press is I will typically pair this up with something like chin-ups. Since you're using a rack anyways, it's not too difficult to do some chin-ups in between the overhead press. Now, for some clients, this will be far too intense. They won't be able to handle this much volume because pair these together and it is a lot of work. But it's something I encourage you to try pushing yourself, pushing your maybe more advanced clients to try, because you get a lot of work done in a short period of time. And again, these aren't by themselves super hard to do, again, for a relatively advanced person. And you pair them up, you're going to get a lot of strength gains while also getting a lot of conditioning gains at the same time. But again, what you can also do, which is completely fine, what I do for a lot of people, is something like face pulls here. Or it could be a shoulder mobility exercise, shoulder cars, it could be bent over Ys, YTWLs, anything like that is a really good fit for this position. You could do a core exercise too. I just prefer upper back exercises because I like to get as much rowing and upper back work into my workouts as possible, because I know a lot of people are hunched over, and especially working with guys, working with myself, a lot of guys tend to have shoulder issues just from going too heavy and doing too much bench, and so I want to kind of counteract that stuff. From here, overhead press, let's just say we're doing incline dumbbell as the supporting exercise, and then let's put the chin-ups here. So here's our two supporting exercises. Incline bench is going to have a good carryover to overhead press, and then chin-ups obviously are just a good superset for the incline bench, because we've got vertical pressing here, relatively vertical pressing, and then we've got a vertical pull just to counteract that. And then from here, again, we could do our circuit of exercises. So we can go with something like just a half kneeling one arm press, do lateral raises and triceps, tricep push down. And then let's add in a fourth one here, because again, upper body is much lighter and most people can typically handle a little bit more volume on an upper body day. So we can do a rear delt fly. And this doesn't have to, let's make sure you guys see the rear delt fly. So there we go, there's a final circuit there. And this doesn't have to be like a C1, you know, C1 to C4, it could be a C1, C2, D1, D2 kind of thing. You can cut out an exercise, you know, if your clients, if it's taking too long for them to get through stuff. It's something really important, always kind of check in with. I plan for these workouts to be around that 50 to 60 minute mark. If they start getting really long, I'm gonna start cutting stuff out because there's no real reason to work out longer than an hour for most people. If you want to make faster gains and you have that time commitment and it's a primary concern and a primary focus for you, then there's really nothing wrong working out for longer than an hour. But for most people, it just doesn't really make much sense. So I always want the workout to be about an hour. So again, you can manipulate things as needed to make the workout shorter.